Hello there, my little mathematicians. Today we're going to cover absolute value. So first, if you can go ahead and copy this stuff up at the top, the definitions, and then we're going to go through and try some examples together. Okay, so feel free to always pause the video if you want to, if we go too fast as you're copying the definitions down, or even if you want to try some on your own, pause it, try it, and then unpause it and come back and join us. Okay, so first off, absolute value is a number's distance from zero on the number line. That stands for number. That's not a hashtag. That means number. Okay, so when they ask you these questions, they're going to say the absolute value of 5. They're going to write it like this. Okay, so they're going to have those bars on either side. That's asking what's the absolute value of 5, meaning how far is the number 5 from 0 on the number line. So then when you go to write your answer, you would just say, oh, 5 is 5 away from 0. So your answer to what's the absolute value of 5 would just be 5. You drop those absolute value signs, because otherwise, if you didn't drop them, then it would be like they asked you, hey, what's the absolute value of 5? And if you kept the absolute value signs, then you would say, what is the absolute value of 5? This isn't Jeopardy. I want you to answer the question, not answer it in the form of a question. So again, when you're answering the question of an absolute value, please get rid of those absolute value signs. And then also, be careful when you write those bars that you do them bigger than the number itself, so that this doesn't look like 151, but instead it looks like what's the absolute value of 5. Okay. Also, one thing I want to draw attention to is absolute value is usually almost always positive. Why? Because distances are positive. So both the absolute value of 3 and -3 are going to just be 3. Because how far is -3 from 0? It's 3 away. How far away is 3 from 0? It is also only 3 away. Okay, so they might ask you, use the number line to find the absolute value of 7. Or they would just write, what is the absolute value of 7? And you would say, oh, it's 7, because 7 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 away from 0. Okay, so how would you answer number 2? Go ahead and try that. Okay, so they could have asked it like this, or they could have said, what is the absolute value of 4? Then what would you write if this is what they asked you? You would have said, yes, just positive 4. Because 4, let's find that on the number line, -4 is right here. And how far away is that from 0? Well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 away. Okay, so the absolute value of -4 is 4. What about the next one? What would it say? And you're like, I don't know, it doesn't have a number line for me. Well, just kind of imagine a number line in your head. Most of the time, they're not going to provide one for you. This is most likely how they're going to ask the questions. Okay, whenever you see those absolute value bars, that's asking what's the absolute value of the number inside. So how far away is 12 from 0? How far away is 12 from 0? You tell me. It's 12 away from 0. Okay, how far away is -8 from 0? -8 is also just a positive number away from 0, right? Because whether it's -8, it's 8 away, or whether it's a positive 8, it's still 8 away. Whether it started as a positive or a negative, they're going to end as a positive answer because distances are always 0. Okay, so then what would number 5 be? A positive 19. And then it's going to get tricky. And you're like, why? Because isn't it the same thing? The absolute value of 7 is just 7. True. But then there's that negative sign out in front. So what this is saying is, what's the opposite of the absolute value of 7? Well, the opposite of the absolute value of 7 is a -7. And you're like, what? Okay, so inside the absolute value signs, it's saying how far away is that number from 0? Well, whether it was a -19 or a positive 19, it's still 19 away from 0, right? Same thing with this. Whether it was a positive 7 or a -7, inside the absolute value signs, it's a positive distance of 7 from 0. But then out in front, there's this negative sign saying, so it's the opposite of that positive 7, which is a negative 7. So if you see a negative out in front, then and only then will your answer end as negative when you're dealing with these absolute values. Okay, why don't you go ahead and try 7 through 10. Okay, so you paused it to try them. Now you unpaused it and you're back with us. The absolute value of negative 5 is 5. The absolute value of 0 is just 0. 0 is neither negative nor positive. Okay, and then for our next one, it says, what's the absolute value of 53? It's just 53. But then there's that negative out in front, so it's saying, what's the opposite of that? A negative 53. Okay, and then what is the absolute value of negative 10 is just 10. And then you have that negative out in front, so it's saying, what's the opposite of that? A negative 10. What do you notice about all of these? When was the only time that it ended in a negative answer? When there was a negative out in front. So see how here, here, and here are the only ones that ended as negatives, and there was a negative out in front of the absolute value signs. Okay, so see if you can do these bonus ones then, based upon that information. Okay, let's go ahead and check. If I went too fast, remember, you can pause it. Okay, now unpause it and you're back with us. Okay, the absolute value of 7 is just 7. And then you have the opposite of that, which is a negative 7. Again, it ended as a negative because there is a negative out in front of the absolute value bars. Okay, the absolute value of negative 7 is just 7, but then the opposite of that is negative. Okay, and our final last one, the opposite of negative 7 is a positive 7. And what is the absolute value of positive 7? Just 7. Okay, so again, notice that the only time that these answers ended as a negative is if there was if there was a negative sign out in front of the absolute value bars. Otherwise, if there's no negative out in front of the absolute value signs, then your answer ends as positive, because absolute value is talking about the distance a number is from 0, and distances are always positive. All right? So not too difficult, right? Congratulations on mastering yet another standard.